Hey everybody, welcome back to In the Kitchen with Delightful Donna. Today we're going to make a couple of fun recipes that were passed down to me from my husband's grandmother, and so they're great family recipes that our family really enjoys. It's still hot out, so some people are like, why are you making such big dishes that you eat when it's cold outside? But we just eat it all year round. So first we're going to make red chili sauce. We're going to be making chili Colorado today for dinner. So we're going to make the red chili sauce. So I'm going to show you guys how to get that started. So you take your dried chili pods. Today I'm using Guajillo chilies and I'm using New Mexico Red Chile. And so first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the seeds out. So we just break the end off and then we open them up. And you can see they're still pliable. They're not crunchy hard for the most part. And then we're just going to try to get as many seeds out as possible. We're going to strain it later, so not a big deal if you don't get every single one of them out. And then we're going to set them aside. We're going to continue to do this until we get these all de-seeded. Then we're going to take them over to the stove and put them into a pot of water so that we can reconstitute them. Once we get that part done, then the fun starts. Okay, so here we are at the stovetop. We've got all of these chili pods de-seeded. So now we're just going to place them into a medium saucepan. Did we get any escapees? Oh, they got them all in there. All right. And then I'm going to put 3 cloves of garlic and about a teaspoon of salt. And remember, guys, with my little spice containers here, that each one of these spoons is a half teaspoon. So 2 of those is a teaspoon. And for a twist, I'm going to put in a whole tomato when I boil these chilies. And you guys are probably saying that's not really traditional, but if your family likes things a little less spicy, like my family does, putting a tomato in actually cuts down on the acidity of the chilies and the spiciness just a little bit. It's not going to be tomatoey at all. It just helps really with that flavor, and it intensifies the flavor of the chili as well. So now I'm just going to cover this with water until it's just covered. These don't need to be swimming. Like that. And we're going to turn on the flame and we're going to let these cook down on a medium-high heat. We're going to bring it up to a boil, let it boil for about a minute. Then we're going to turn it off and put a lid on and just let them steep. And that's going to soften those chilies up really nicely. And then we'll move on to the next step. Meantime, while we have the chilies over here starting to come up to a boil, we're going to start preparing our meat for the chili Colorado. So you see I have a deep, heavy pot here. This is a cast iron covered in enamel. So this can go into the oven up to 450 degrees, which is great. It's very versatile. So I've already started heating up the pan to medium-high heat. We're going to use a very neutral oil. We're just going to put a little bit of avocado oil in the pan, just enough to coat the bottom. You don't need a ton of it. And then we're going to start putting our meat in, and we're going to cook the meat in batches. I'm using beef stew meat. You can actually do this recipe with beef or pork. You could do it with ground beef if you want to on a weeknight when you want to just get it on the table quickly. I'm going to do this with the stew meat, like I said, and we're going to cook this in the oven so that it gets this meat really nice and tender. So don't overcrowd your pan. That's a good tip for you guys. If you put too much in the pan at one time, then your meat is going to steam. It's not going to fry. And you want to get a good sear on this meat. That's why we're cooking it in small batches. So as this starts to sear, we'll flip them a couple of times. We're not looking to get them completely done. We're just looking to get some nice color on the outside. Then we'll transfer them to another bowl. We'll continue to cook in batches. And then once our red sauce is done, then we'll combine it all with the meat and then we'll place it in the oven. Okay, we're starting to get some nice color, so we're gonna go ahead and flip each one of these over now. And as you can see, if we get right down into that pot, you can see that it's starting to brown on one side. And once we get these all flipped over, then we're gonna season our meat. You don't wanna season on the raw side because if when you put salt on raw meat, it pulls out the juices and then your meat comes out dry and stringy. It gets tough. We don't want that. Okay. For our seasoning, we're just gonna use a little bit of garlic powder, black pepper, and kosher salt. And I've talked to you guys before about how I make this spice blend up ahead of time. I'm gonna do about 1/4 teaspoon and just sprinkle on top. Because remember, we're doing this in batches, so we're gonna be layering those spices in each batch. We're gonna cook these for another minute or so until they get some color on the second side, and then we're gonna transfer them over and just continue to cook the batches. And our chilies are looking good. They're starting, the water's getting hot. It should be coming up to a boil here in about another minute and a half or so. And then, like I said, once that comes up to a boil, with that lid on and get those to steep. Okay, now our chilies have steeped. Ooh, look at that steam. So you can see that they're, I'll put some up out of here so you can see. Now they're really soft. You see they've changed color a little bit. They're a little more red now. And our tomato is cooked. And our garlic is cooked down in here as well. So now we're gonna put this into the blender with just a couple spices, and we're gonna blend, blend, blend. You guys wanna have a pretty strong blender for this. This is something that it makes your motor work pretty hard because you wanna get it to a pretty smooth consistency. So just put all of your chilies inside of your blender jar. A little bit of that liquid is okay, but I'm gonna give you guys a pro tip. You don't wanna use this liquid in the blender to blend this to the correct consistency. You wanna use fresh water for that. And that's because this boiling liquid can make your red chili or your chili Colorado sauce, it can make it kind of bitter. So we don't want it to be bitter. So we're not gonna use that. We wanna make sure we get all the chilies out. Like I said, a little bit's gonna be okay, but you don't wanna use too much of it. Make sure we get all those good chilies out. All of that garlic. Okay, looks like we got it all. We'll just set this aside. All right, and to the blender, I'm gonna add a little bit of fresh water. I kind of do it to eyeball. Let's see, looks like about 1/2 cup or so. And we can always add more if we need to. And if it does come out too thin, then we can always cook it down in the pan a little bit and reduce it down to make it to the consistency you like. I'm gonna add a teaspoon of Mexican oregano. So here's 1/2 teaspoon. And remember that we always rub it between our palms to release the oils in the dried spice. And here's another 1/2 teaspoon. That smells amazing. Okay, and now we're gonna add about a tablespoon of Knorr seasoning powder, and this is the bouillon powder. This one is chicken and tomato together, and I really like this combination. It adds a little bit of spices to it, makes it not over salted, so you don't have to add salt to this. This is your salt component, but it also has a really good rich flavor. So that's about a tablespoon. We're gonna take this and set it up on our blender and blend away. Okay, so our red chili is blended up. We have it here, it looks great. So now we're gonna turn on our frying pan, or Dutch oven, sorry, not really a frying pan, I guess, but we're gonna turn it on medium-high heat. I have it about 8. I'm gonna add a little bit of oil. You guys can see down in this pan that there's some brown bits in the pan. That's from the beef, and we don't wanna get rid of that. You could wash it out if you want to, if that's what makes you feel comfortable, but that's where all the flavor is from cooking that meat, so we're gonna leave it in. So again, we're just gonna put some avocado oil in here. I'm not gonna put too much. This is probably about 1/8 of a cup. And we're gonna let that heat up really, really good. And the reason we're doing that is because we're gonna make a roux, because this chili, if you guys can see down inside here, it's not super thick. Okay, it's a little bit on the thin side, and that's okay. We're just gonna cook it down a little bit. So we're gonna make a roux. We're not gonna put a ton of flour in here, guys. We're just gonna put a little bit. I have a 1/2 cup measure in here, and I'm probably gonna use half that, so about 1/4 of a cup. I'm gonna make sure your oil's good and hot. Don't touch it, but just make sure it's good and hot. It's moving around the pan pretty good, and I'm just gonna sprinkle this flour in here so that I get a nice little roux going. And I'm just gonna I'm just gonna use my metal spoon to stir it around. And you just wanna cook that for a minute or so. You wanna cook the flour taste out of it. Make sure that you smooth out your lumps. So then that's a real good tip for you as well. Then your gravy or sauce or whatever you're making won't be lumpy if you smooth out all the lumps now. And you'll see that it's still kind of liquidy. We're not looking for a paste here. We're just looking to heat it up and to, like I said, to cook out that flour taste. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna strain out our chili sauce. Okay. Another good 30 seconds or so. You'll see the roux starts to change color a little bit. It gets to a little bit of a tan color, and that's what we're looking for. So then your flour is cooking out. Nothing worse than having somebody's gravy and it just tastes like flour. So, a good cook. All right. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in here with a metal sieve. You guys probably seen these before. It's just a metal strainer. I have one that has these little legs on it, so it'll sit on across the pot, which is really nice. Now we're gonna take this and we're gonna pour a little bit in, like this. You hear it sizzling? All right, so I'm gonna just whisk this up. Whoopsie. I'm gonna whisk this up. You're gonna start seeing it get really super thick because our fire's on. So if you stir it in the metal strainer like this, it'll strain a little faster. Gets all those clumps out of the way for you. And we're gonna continue stirring down here because we don't want this to clump up too bad. It is gonna clump a little. So now we got the last of it in there. I'm not straining this last little bit. It's okay if we get some chunkies in there. Gives it texture and body, that's fine. All right. Here. Okay, so now you see it's bubbling up on the sides. Now you guys can see that this chili is nice and thick. If it's too thick for your preference, by all means, put some water in it and thin it out. You could use chicken stock or that Knorr tomato chicken that we used. You could add that to some water and put that in here. I'm gonna leave this as is. Does not look delicious. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add our meat back in. Remember we made this meat before. Look at all the juices in that meat, you guys. This is gonna be delicious. I don't want it to splash, so I'll use my spoon. Kind of guide it a little bit. All right, so now we have our meat back in. Does not look delicious. It already looks so good. All right, we want to let this cook down for a couple of hours. Like I said, I preheated the oven to 325. It's about there now. It looks like it's about 310 degrees, so just a couple more minutes, and then we'll be able to put this in. I'm also going to add potatoes. This is another twist for me. Not everyone puts potatoes in their chili Colorado, but my family loves it that way. My husband's grandmother was from New Mexico, and that's the way they make it there, so we're going to do it that way. You use any potato that your family likes. We happen to like red potatoes. I don't peel them because my family likes them with the skin on, and of course that adds more nutritional benefit. But I just take a red potato and I slice them long ways in half, and then I slice each of those into 4 pieces, so basically 8 pieces from a potato. They're pretty good sized chunks. If you get them too small, then you won't want to cook it as long because the potatoes will break down inside the sauce. So with them this large, they'll cook, they're about the same sizes as the meat chunks, and then they'll cook at about the same time. So when we take this out of the oven, everything will be perfectly done. So we're gonna add our potatoes. And you see that when I first started with the sauce, it was only about a quarter of the way up the pot, and it didn't look like it was that much sauce. And you guys are probably thinking, she didn't make very much. But as you can see, once we add our meat and potatoes, this makes a full pot. So this will obviously be enough to feed my family. We have 6 adults here, and so this will be plenty for them, and then enough to have lunch tomorrow for probably 1 or 2 of them. Okay, oven is preheated. We have everything down inside the sauce, so now we're gonna turn off the flame. We're gonna put a lid on it, and then we're gonna put this down inside the oven, and we're just gonna let it go. I did have to take out one of my racks. My oven has 3 racks in it. I did have to take one of them out in order to fit this in here. So you want to put it in the center of your oven and close it up. And we're gonna let that go for about 2 hours or so. We'll check it at that point, see how tender the meat is. You want the meat to be really tender, falling apart almost. And we'll check it in 2 hours. If you want to check it sooner, you can, but I like to let it just sit in there and do its thing and make its magic happen in the oven, and then we'll come back in 2 hours and see what it looks like. Okay, it's been about 2 hours and 15 minutes really, and now we're gonna go in the oven and take out our baking dish and see what that chili Colorado looks like. Okay, just lift this pot. It's really heavy. Just put it on the stove for a second. And I've turned off my oven already. And here we go. Let me bring it over here, guys. Alrighty, here we go. And there it is. Ta-da! Okay. So you see it's still bubbling up a little. Let's stir it up. All right. There's a little bit of fat from the meat in there, but oh guys, that adds to the flavor. Look at that. Doesn't that look delicious? Okay. So now we're gonna plate it up. We're gonna serve this with some, just some basic Spanish rice. And I'm gonna make a video and teach you guys how to make that rice probably next week. But for now, I went ahead and made it ahead of time. So I'm gonna plate it up for you guys. All right, here's our rice that's already made. You see it's fresh, it's steaming. And like I said, we're gonna just plate this up. So I'm gonna get a scoop of rice on the plate, like so. Doesn't have to be fancy, guys. Okay, now we'll come back on over to where we have that chili resting. And let's give a little scoop of that as well. Right alongside that rice. Guys, look at that. Oh, I wish we had smell-o-vision. This smells so delicious. I wish you guys could smell it. All right, there's our plate. We're gonna add some fresh sliced avocado to this. That's how I normally serve it. And then of course, with a tortilla. All right, guys, let's get in here and give this a taste. Now remember how I told you once we get this done, that meat is gonna basically fall apart. And take a look at this, guys. Let's zoom in on that. And look how easily that meat just breaks apart. Okay, it's really hot. Mmm. That is delicious. The meat is so tender. That chili has gotten so rich just being in the Dutch oven for that long. It is absolutely delicious. And like I told you guys, these potatoes are not mush. You see how they're still one piece, and look at that. They cut perfectly. This is absolutely delicious. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed my recipes. So please follow us on Instagram at cooking_with DD. Like and subscribe our YouTube channel at In the Kitchen with Delightful Donna. And make sure you hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. And share, share, share. We'd love for you guys to share our videos so we can get more subscribers and bring you more recipes. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.